Hey, welcome to day 250. Woo! You made it. Good job. 250 days. If you made it this far, congratulations. That's outstanding. 250 days in God's Word. Give yourself a pat on the back. Go celebrate. Go have a great dinner. What a great, after we do this, what a great thing it is to say that you've done this 250 days. Even 249. Okay, so today is a big deal. And I hope you get this. I'm going to try to make this short, but there is a ton. I'm not going to be reading a lot of it. I will read some, but I think I'm just going to explain what's going on here. So let's get at it, and let's hope this is pleasing to the Lord. Daniel's dream of four major kingdoms. You have Babylon, you have Medo-Persia, Greece, and the Antichrist in Rome. Okay, the Antichrist is not the kingdom. It's Rome that is the kingdom. And that's debatable whether or not Rome is going to be where it's at in the end. But I think when we get into Revelation, I will prove that to be so. It may not be actually in Rome, but I think the Vatican plays a part, and whether or not it's actually in the place of the Vatican where the ultimate religion is taken a seat, that remains to be seen. So, four major kingdoms, and that's what they are. The lion, the bear, the leopard, and then finally, what is the last one? The third, the fourth beast, terrifying, dreadful, and very strong, and devoured and crushed its victims with huge iron teeth and trampled their remains beneath its feet. So Rome was the iron part of the iron and clay of the bottom of Nebuchadnezzar's statue. Okay, so that represents the fourth of the four kingdoms that is talking about. Okay, and it talks about things that are happening. Okay, so I want to read verse 9 and 10. I watched as thrones were put in place, and the Ancient One sat down to judge. His clothing was as white as snow, his hair like purest wool. He sat on a fiery throne with wheels of blazing fire. We've already heard about how the ones who have seen this picture of God, and he has these wheels of blazing fire, and just an amazing view of this. In verse 10, it says, "And a river of fire was pouring out, flowing from his presence. Millions of angels ministered to him, and many millions stood to attend him. Then the court began its session, and the books were open." The books that we've been looking at, okay? Mostly what we're talking about here is the book of life. And this is talking about the great white throne judgment, okay? So you have the church age. Christ comes and sets up the church age. And then we have the rapture and the tribulation time where the Antichrist rules, and the second coming. And that tribulation time is what we call the judgment seat of Christ. Then that's not being judging down here. That's up in heaven where we're with Christ and we get to talk about all the things we did. And it's a wonderful thing. And then we have the 1,000-year reign when Christ sets up the kingdom as far as on the earth. And then you have at the end of the 1,000-year reign, the great white throne judgment that we will talk about and read about. I'm just planting the seed in your head here. And there's a judgment at that point. And that's what this is talking about. So let's take a step back here. And we have the four kingdoms. And in that, it talks about the 10 horns. And there's 10 tracts of land. Or maybe there's just 10 kingdoms in the world that it's talking about. It might not just be the land, but 10 kings that represent the world in the tribulation time. Okay, and he annihilates the Antichrist comes in and annihilates the three of those kingdoms or kings, and he takes over. Now, let's get this straight here. We talked about Rome. Let's go to verse 20 and 20 through 27. So here's talking about the 10 horns and the explanation that is going on here. Then he's, let's see here. What's important about this? I've already talked about those things. Let's just read part of it. I also asked about the 10 horns on the fourth beast's head and the little horn that came up afterward and destroyed 3 of the other horns. So I've explained that. This horn had seemed greater than the others, and it had human eyes and a mouth that was boasting arrogantly. So in the tribulation time, the Antichrist is going to be boasting arrogantly. As I watched, this horn was waging war against God's holy people and was defeating them. That is in the last half of the tribulation. Secretly, in the first half of the tribulation, he is waging war, but he sets up a false peace, and I believe that is to get all of the Jews into the land of Israel. Until the Ancient One, the Most High, came and judged in favor of his holy people. That's the second coming, where he judges in favor of the holy people. Then the time arrived for the holy people to take over the kingdom. In the 1,000-year reign, nobody's touching Israel. They are going to be protected, and all the nations get to see this, and they have to acknowledge this. That is forced upon them for 1,000 years. Okay, then he said to me, this fourth beast is the fourth world power that will rule the earth. It will be different from all the others. It will devour the whole world, trampling and crushing everything in its path. Its 10 horns are 10 kings who will rule that empire. Then another king will arise, different from the other 10, who will subdue 3 of them. He will defy the Most High, oppress the holy people of the Most High. Here it is. So I've explained all this, and I'm just reading it. Here it is. He will defy the Most High and oppress the holy people of the Most High. He will try to change their sacred festivals and laws. That's mid-tribulation. And they will be placed under his control for a time, times, and half a time. A time is a year. Times is 2 years. Half a time is half a year. A time, 2 more years for times, and a half a time. 3.5 years. Mid-tribulation, he turns on the holy people and wages war against them specifically. But then the court will pass judgment, and all his power will be taken away and completely destroyed. Then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of the kingdoms under heaven will be given to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will last forever, and all the rulers will serve and obey him. That is the end of the vision. Daniel was terrified, and he kept those things to himself. Okay, so there's more to this. Then he has another vision of a ram and a goat. Okay, so the ram represents Medo-Persia, and the goat represents the Greek Empire that comes in and takes over, and the Greek Empire includes Rome. Okay, so, and you have Alexander the Great, and his reign doesn't last very long, and it's the 4 horns that it's talking about is the 4 generals that take over and split it apart. Okay, and what I find awesome about this is it's a goat and a ram, and the goat is always the sacrifice for the sins of the people, and the goat represents the Antichrist in the end and the rule against God's people. So we're going to talk about that. The Ram 8:20, verse 20, says, the 2-horned ram represents the kings of Media and Persia. Okay, and then we move on. The shaggy male goat represents the king of Greece, and the large horn between his eyes represents the first king of the Greek Empire. Okay, and it goes on to explain what I just said. At the end of their rule, when their sin is at its height, a fierce king and master of intrigue will rise to power. This is the Antichrist. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. Stop. He's voted into power. He doesn't go in and take over. The Antichrist is not going to do that. Revelation 6, the breaking of the seals, the first of the seal. As I watched, the Lamb broke the first of the 7 seals on the scroll. Then I heard one of the 4 living beings say with a voice like thunder, "Come." Verse 2, I looked up and saw a white horse standing there. This is not the white horse of Christ. This is the deception of what this is talking about. Its rider carried a bow and no arrows, and a crown was placed on his head. So a bow is like a weapon, but it has no ammunition. And the point is, he is deceiving the holy people, and he is going to wage war. How is he getting to power? By deception, and he's voted into power. A crown was placed on his head. He rode out to win many battles and gain the victory. This is not Christ. This is the Antichrist. Okay, I can't wait to get to Revelation to talk about all that again. Hopefully by the time we get to Revelation, all of this makes sense to you. Okay, so he will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause a shocking amount of destruction and succeed in everything he does. He will destroy powerful leaders and devastate the holy people. He will be a master of deception and will become arrogant. He will destroy many without warning. He will even take on the prince of princes in battle. That's why this is the Antichrist, because he will go to war against Christ in Armageddon. But he will be broken, but not by human power. So what are we talking about? Is this Satan or is this the Antichrist? Well, if you read in Revelation, Satan takes over the Antichrist. And he wages war against the people, and he is really running the show. And the part where it says he will be broken is the part that I want to talk about here, but not by human power, meaning Christ is going to take over. At Armageddon, Christ wins the battle. We are watching. That's how awesome that's going to be. And he will be broken, meaning that Satan will be bound for 1,000 years and allowed to come back at the end of the 1,000 years. Okay? And the Antichrist and the false prophet will be thrown into the lake of fire. Okay. I got to make sure I've got all of this stuff. And now you get to the next part. It says, the deception and stuff. Let's see if I can, what we ought to do is just keep this in here. We got to go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9 and 10 and 11. This is talking about the Antichrist. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 9, 10, 11, in case you haven't marked this. This is important. You got to mark this. This man will come to do the work of Satan with counterfeit power and signs and miracles. Counterfeit power. Signs and miracles. We already have counterfeit power. People trying to pull things over on people. He will use every kind of evil deception. He will be a master of deception in Daniel. He will use every kind of evil deception. This is in 2 Thessalonians, to fool those on their way to destruction. These are people that aren't going to be saved. These are people on their way to destruction. Before the flood, you have all the people thumbing their noses and doing whatever wicked things they want to do. And finally God says enough. And they're making fun of Noah for building the ark. If you go down to Tennessee and you look at the ark that they built down there for just to show the concept of how big it was, think about if somebody actually built that ark there today. There's nothing around. And he's saying there's a flood. If that happened today, people would be like, whatever, dude. And so God allowed that deception to be in their eyes because they were going to their destruction. You talk about the people being led into Egypt for 400 years into slavery. Why? To allow the sins of the people, the Amalekites, the Anakites, the Arkites, all those Hittites, Hivites, all of those people, the Canaanites in the land of Israel, to the sin to run its course. God wants to save everybody, but he loves everybody enough to make their own decisions, and he knows whose name is written in the book of life that will not be blotted out. Those people were allowed to have their sin run its course. Look at what is happening today in our world. Not just America, but if you look at America, America seems to be the last standing resort, but it's really Israel. And all the sin is being allowed to run its course, and people are thumbing their nose at what's going on, and even thumbing their nose at what we believe in Christ. What a wicked thing, but it is being allowed to happen. And this is another one of those things. The second part of this. Okay. Deception to fool those on their way to destruction because they refuse. And think about it. You try to talk to these people. They refuse to love and accept the truth that would save them. You telling me we're not near this time? And here's the scary part. Think about the scary part of the flood. Think about the scary part of the people that lived in Israel, that Arab world, that whole area, and think about what this says at the end. So God not the Antichrist, not Satan, and not the false prophet. God will cause them to be greatly deceived, and they will believe these lies. Not because God's like, well, you know what? I'm just taking half of these people, and I'll allow them to be deceived. No, they have deliberately followed their own evil desires. I'm not passing judgment. God is passing judgment on them at this point, and he's allowing them to be deceived, and he puts that in their mind. Cause them to be greatly deceived, and they will believe these lies. Then they will be condemned for enjoying evil rather than believing the truth. Vengeance is the Lord's, not ours. And we get to this piece. Get your calculators ready. The vision about this is verse 26. The vision about the 2300 evenings and mornings is true, but none of these things will happen for a long time, so keep this vision a secret. 2300 evenings and mornings, 2300 days. So we take 2300 and we divide it by 360. That is 6 years and 140 days. Not quite 7 years. I'm alluding to a 7 that is the major 7 in our book for our time. And that's coming in Daniel 9, but we're not at Daniel 9 yet. So I want you to write down the 2300 evenings and mornings. 2300 days equals, divided by 360, is 6 years and 140 days. Why did they do 360? Because back then they used 360 days as a year. Go ahead and do 2300 days divided by 365, and that's 6 years, 110 days. Okay? So keep that, because when we hit Daniel 9, we will talk about those things at the end of Daniel 9. And I think through Daniel 12, okay? So now let's mention a few other things. It talks about, quote, the time of the end. First of all, almost 7 years is what 7 years is the tribulation time. So I'm alluding to that, but I'm going to talk about why this is 6 years and 140 days and not exactly seven years. Okay, so we're going to go back to that, and I don't have a perfect explanation for it, but it will help you understand some of the things that you're going to be reading. Okay, so this is talking about the 7 years of tribulation where the Antichrist rules. All right, let's go to the time of the end. Chapter 8, verse 17, as Gabriel approached the place where I was standing, I became so terrified that I fell with my face to the ground. Son of man, he said, you must understand that the events you have seen in your vision relate to the time of the end. Quote, time of wrath, verse 19. Then he said, I am here to tell you that what will happen later in the time of wrath.